Apologies for not putting a video out yesterday. In the previous 60 days, I had put out over 70 videos, and I was kind of in the middle of some personal issues anyway, so I just needed a day. And to be truthful, the video that I had done the day before, I was hoping somebody down in the comments would have that epiphany moment about what I was trying to say. No one seemed to actually get what I was saying, and I'll take the fault for that after having watched the video myself. I try not to do that. It seems almost narcissistic to watch your own videos. But I did miss a couple of points that I was trying to make, and I'll try to reiterate those in today's video. But thank you for your patience. Anyway, this is a good idea. This is a really, really good idea here. This is off USNI here. This harkens back a lot to the training regimes that used to exist back in the late 80s and early 90s when it was an entirely different military. And I'm also going to apologize real quick for the shaking of the phone. I just had a very rough weekend. A lot of things that you shouldn't have to do at some of my age, but nevertheless, onward and upward, as they say. This article here talks about how they're going to focus more on readiness training and being on the cutting edge for the sailors and put them in real-time actual events. I know that personally here there's something that they're saying using more computer-based training is going to cause maybe a loss of the personal element, but as we can see in a lot of these cases, you know, operating a destroyer is not just operating a destroyer. It depends on where you're at, the crew you're at, the mission, what's going on at the time, the region you're in. That kind of stuff, of course, is going to always have to be done, you know, once a sailor reaches his specific duty station. I know that, you know, we went through the interrogation school down at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, but some of us were going to Europe, some of us are going to South America like me, some of us were going to Asia. There were going to be entirely different dynamics that took place in each of those situations. I apologize for the service going on outside right now. But point being that in this particular case, the amount of money that they're putting into this and the direction they're going, I think is going to be a giant boost to Navy sailors' morale and the preparedness. So anyway, to the other day's video, I'm going to talk about this guy. Now, I've talked about him before in his issue with his questionable rulings about the non-delegation doctrine as regards to pedophiles registering. But I'm going to reveal what I actually was trying to get people to understand in the last video. And here's where we're going to start. Gorsuch is a proponent of textualism in statutory interpretation and originalism in interpreting the U.S. Constitution. Now, there have been a lot of cases where the Second Amendment has made its way to the Supreme Court. Most recently in 2016, where they were trying to reiterate this issue of whether it grants a right to a specific person to carry a weapon for a specific reason. We of course know it has anything to do with hunting, and what it really has to do with, if you go back to the original intent, was that states, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, were very, very much independent at that time of any national considerations. And joining the U.S., joining the United States, was still something that was a lot of argument, the differences between the states. And this was one where if they signed on to be part of the United States, it would give the U.S. the ability to call up the U.S. as a whole, to call up the militia of any one state for national defense. And a lot of states were concerned that that would leave their states vulnerable. And there was the slavery issue, and the big issue was Virginia, where there was almost 1 million slaves, and they were being basically held at force of arms by a very, very small group of people. Harkens back to the Bible story, where the Hebrews grew so numerous that they went through and were killing the firstborns. to keep their numbers down. But it was the same argument. It was the same idea. And there was, of course, this idea that each state needed the ability to, under force of arms, protect its sovereignty. So in that case, I agree with you. But the concern was always the protection of the state. The concern was always the ability of the militia to be called up to protect the liberty of the people. Okay, there was never any textual concern at that time of someone's ability just to defend themselves from their neighbor or to defend themselves from, anyone, to go settle a duel, for example. And in every case that we've seen where we've had these mass shootings, no one was carrying those weapons or using those weapons to defend against anything. They were using them proactively and offensively to act out on some personal vendetta or personal level of anger against innocents who were unarmed. Now, we have already established, and nobody's even debating the idea, that if you're a convicted felon, you can't own a gun. So we've given the government already the ability to take weapons away from certain people and certain groups of people. We've also given the government the ability to say you have to register this weapon. You have to jump over a bunch of legal and government-imposed hoops to get your weapon and to maintain your weapon. It does say the right to keep and bear arms, but it doesn't say the right to profit from the sale of them. So what I was trying to get to is this. If they were to go in and they were to repeal the Second Amendment based on one of these events and then go about confiscating guns after it, they would be making your point for you. They're not going to do that. They're never going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to wait for some pro-Second Amendment group to file some kind of a lawsuit. This is why a lot of these companies have been the big people that support the industry are very, very, very circumspect about trying to push anything through the courts to reestablish anything. They like everything the way it is now. And if there's any desire, these false flags that you like to talk about, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get someone, they're trying to bait someone into filing some kind of a lawsuit saying that it was unconstitutional, for example, that Donald Trump banned bump stocks. I'm just using that as an example. Okay, to push that through all the way up into the Supreme Court, because they know, I think they really know, based on, and if you look through the histories of everyone who's sitting on the court right now, they would say, no, sorry, yeah, we can make laws that restrict certain kinds of weapons. We can do all sorts of things like this. Because the original text, was not written at a time where it said that you had a right to keep a weapon to protect yourself from your neighbor. It's the same ruling that they had about the police, that the police don't have any specific duty to protect any one person. They're there to protect society, as a whole. So that's what they're trying to do with these false flags. They're not trying to do it to get somebody to ban the Second Amendment. They're going to leave the Second Amendment right where it is. And they're just going to say it doesn't apply to you. And they're going to take your guns anyway. Because they already can. If you're a felon, all they have to do is just declare you a felon. That's so much easier. If there's a group of people out there who's, if they're a patriot group, or if they're someone who they're keeping weapons because, they have decided that they're now the militia. All they have to do is put a law on the books, which they know they can, and then say that these people are now in violation of it, put it before a friendly judge, get them declared felons. Felons can't have guns, and then they'll come take your guns, and it won't have anything to do with the Second Amendment. Nothing to do with it. And then the news cycle will change. I'm sure it'll make the news, and then it'll go away. And if they get someone to actually try to push this through a court, to get them to reread this issue and to reread this the constitutional issue on this, they're going to, since this guy said he's textual, I'm going to pull this up for you, what it exactly says. It talks specifically about this issue with the militia. And someone out there tried to make a comment saying that this, when they said security of a free state, that supposedly state meant your state of freedom or your state of peace, personal state. It has nothing to do with that. When it says the word state in the Constitution, it's talking about a state, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, something like that. And this is going to be how they do it. They're trying to goad patriot groups. They're trying to push patriot groups to try to relitigate this so that they can get a landmark recent ruling to say, aha, see, Second Amendment doesn't apply to you, so therefore we're going to come get your guns anyway, and we're not going to have to repeal the Second Amendment. We're just going to reinterpret it to say what we think it's going to say, and take your guns anyway. And it won't even be a Second Amendment issue. That's what they're trying to do. And I was hoping someone was going to be able to get that out of the last video, but it looks like I didn't put out enough information to get someone there. Because that's what it's going to boil down to. They're going to say the second doesn't apply to you. And in these cases where you look back, where it goes all the way back through Denver, San Bernardino, even Fort Hood, all these shootings, Florida, Orlando, all of these places, you're not seeing anyone using a weapon in a defensive posture. And you're seeing them being used against people that are unarmed, which everyone would unanimously say that all of these particular cases, the people using the weapon were doing so in an illegal and felonious manner. I would really, they're having actually this exact conversation in this show called Homeland. I've been watching it since season 1, way, way, way back when they were talking about something completely different. And I think you guys, if you can, if you have access to Showtime somehow, they're actually having this exact argument right now about these patriot groups and what they have the ability to do. And this is what's going on. Eventually someone is going to take the bait. There's going to be some new regulation or some new law passed, and my money's on ammunition. My money is they're going to go after ammunition. Because that's the big question with this kid. You can have an AR-15 all you want. It's a giant club without a clip full of ammunition. And I know that there's times and places and states where there's certain amounts of ammunition you can't find just because it's just not available. That's what they're going to go after. And they're going to make some kind of a ruling that they're going to be able to hold the ammunition makers or the people selling it, accountable. Somebody's going to try to drive this into the courts again because they think somehow, because Gorsuch is a conservative, that they're going to be able to get some landmark ruling that's going to put this to bed, and it's really just going to open a can of worms. That's going to insulate the Second Amendment from patriot groups. Because patriot groups are going to say, hey, look, we're maintaining these arms to keep ourselves free from the federal government. They're going to say, well, yeah, no, you're not. You're criminals. Which is what the Crown did. Which is exactly what the King of England did. He just said, oh, these people aren't soldiers fighting, to protect their country. These people are British subjects that are acting like criminals. In fact, there's even a scene in The Patriot you can go where he's asked, the character played by Mel Gibson is talking to Lord Cornwallis, and he says, I'm here to negotiate the release of X amount of prisoners of war. And he says, we don't have any prisoners of war. We have some criminals being held, under charges. And, he then, of course, plays this card about having certain officers that he doesn't really have and all that. Everybody's familiar with the scene, I'm sure. Point being, but that's what they're going to do here. They're going to say that this particular freedom or this particular amendment doesn't apply to you because you're criminals, which you've already given them the ability to do. And by you, I mean the United States, everyone in the United States, we, I should say, I guess. We have given them the ability to do. They can take away your guns if they can convict you of a felony, period. So that's all, that's done, settled law, nobody's even arguing it, so. Anyway, thank you for your patience again. Really appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.